Hi, this is Pete with IPA Physio. I'm going to take you through a hip mobility series. The emphasis is going to be on various postures, keeping things active, and then reinforcing neuromuscular control in various ranges. I would consider this to be beginner to intermediate level, although there will be a few advanced techniques. Take your time. Remember, the purpose of the stretching is for the legs, for the hips. If at any point you're feeling strain on the lower back or pain in any way, we need to stop or modify to a lower level. So start with me on your back. And it'll help to have a pillow under your head, or if you don't have a pillow easily, some kind of rolled up towel. Also, if you can have some kind of yoga block, you can have that by your side as well. Again, a towel or a couple of towels will suffice as well. But start with your knees up and your feet flat, lying on your back. And I'd like you to just flatten your back and then arch your back. And go through that a couple of times. This is called a pelvic tilt or a pelvic rock. Gently mobilizing the lower back. But more importantly, we're going to use this in our next technique. So bring your left leg and cross it over the right leg. Reach up with your right hand and your left hand to support that leg. And slide the left foot down the thigh and the left knee towards your chest till you feel a light stretch through the outer hip. This shouldn't be a huge stretch, just a nice light stretch to get started. Now, we were doing pelvic rocks just a moment ago. Incorporate those into this stretch. As you flatten your back, you should feel a little bit less of a stretch in the hip. But as you go to arch your back, you should feel how that increases the flexibility and the stretch through that hip. What you're doing here is, by doing the pelvic tilt, you're moving the socket on the ball. Whereas a lot of stretches, we're moving the ball in the socket. This changes the focus and the dimension of the stretch to a degree while keeping it active. And again, just a nice gentle way to start things out. So flattening the back, a little bit less of a stretch. As you arch your back, you should feel a little bit of an increase in stretch. You can slide that leg a little further up towards your chest and continue. Now from here, the natural place a lot of people go is to reach through and grab that opposite leg. Now that's fine if you can do that while keeping your low back flat and equally weighted. But if you don't yet have the flexibility to be able to do that and you find yourself twisted while grabbing that opposite leg, then I want you to stick with this technique or rest the opposite leg up on something like a couch or an ottoman and utilize that so that your low back's stable and you're isolating to the hip. So go ahead and switch legs now. Cross the right leg over the left. Grab the outside of the right knee with the right hand, close to the ankle with the left hand, and start to slide that heel down in the left leg until you feel a light stretch through the outside of the right hip. Once you've got a light stretch, you can alternate rocking the pelvis to arch and flatten the back, and work through that a few times to get the right hip opening up. A theme I'll come back to is isolating the stretch to where we want it, not using the low back as a bailout. So in this case, you want to be feeling the light stretch through the outer hip. For some people, they get more of a stretch if they push the opposite knee away. And for others, you might feel a stretch in both. It just changes the dimension and where you feel it. That's fine, you can do either. Just continue to integrate that pelvic rock, flattening and arching the back. Okay, now, lower that right foot to the ground. Bring the left knee up, hold behind the knee, and hug it towards your chest. Pull your toes up towards you and kick the leg away until you can straighten that knee entirely. So some of you may need to take a towel around the back of the leg if your hands don't reach that far, because I want you to be able to fully lock out the leg using that quad to do so. You'll hug it back in and then kick that leg away like you're trying to kick up towards the ceiling. The point is to get the leg as high as you can, but again, getting the knee totally locked out while the toes are towards you. Hold for 5 to 10 seconds, and then bring it back in. So use the towel if you need, otherwise use your hands. Think about driving the thigh into your hands or the towel to facilitate a good contraction of the quad as you do this stretch. Hugging it in, kick away. You can also circle that foot. Get a good fascial stretch through the lower leg as well, but don't let the knee bend while you're circling that foot. Keep it locked out by firing the quad. Find a lot of people have hamstring mobility deficits, but they also have quad control deficits. So we're trying to get two things done at once here, reinstate optimal function of the quad while lengthening the hamstrings. Okay? So as you continue to do this, each time you press, you should be able to go up a little more towards vertical, straightening that thigh as much as you can. Lower the left leg, grab the right. Hug the knee in towards your chest. Kick away until you can straighten that knee all the way. Hold for 5 to 10 seconds. Bring it back in. Kick it away. Circle that foot, but don't lose the stability of the knee as you circle the foot. Hug it back in. Kick away. Circle the foot, both directions. Variety is good. Hug it back in. Kick it away. Now after you've done about 5 or 6 of these, and I'm going to switch back to my left leg since I didn't do this on the left, I want you to kick with that leg as vertical as possible. Then take your right hand on the inside of the leg and resist yourself trying to push the leg away. So now we're reinstating control of the angle of the leg by engaging our hip flexor while keeping the knee locked out with the quad. And as we push, we're engaging our core as well. Then with your arm, slowly win, pushing the leg away, and then with the leg, push back up into the arm. Do that a few times, slowly pushing away. That's a lengthening eccentric contraction. And then push back up. Do your best to keep that knee as straight as possible. Slowly push away, and then drive back up. Lower that down, back to the right. Kick the right leg up towards the ceiling. Left hand, inside of right leg, trying to push it away. Reinstating the control and the range of motion you gained through your stretching. Slowly let the arm win. Push the leg back up into the hand. Slowly let the arm win. Push back up into the hand. One more time, slowly let it win. Push back up. Good, bring the knee back in and rest it down. Now bring both knees up to about 90 degrees at the hip. And let's do 2 legs, pushing away to straighten the knees. Again, try to straighten the knees all the way. You might need to let the feet move further from you as you do so. However, if you keep going too far, it becomes a real abdominal challenge, which may or may not be good for you. But you don't want to have too much leverage through the legs, causing you to arch your back. Maintain a mostly flat, comfortable position of the spine. I just want you to floss both legs up and down towards the ceiling 8 to 10 times. Try to actively engage the quads as much as you can as you push those feet up into the ceiling. Very good. Now, roll over onto your left side. Use the pillow to support your head so that you're not creating any neck problems. Hug the bottom knee in just above hip height. Take your hands down to the right foot. Again, if you need to, you might use a towel to support if you can't quite reach the foot. If you have knee pain, you can create a little cradle with the towel. Do something like this. Hold around the back of it, and then you can use your hand and the towel to support your knee. If you have the flexibility and there's no pain, try to grab around that midfoot. Now the point is of the hand holding the foot is to keep the knee bent as far as possible. The stretch through the quad is going to come by engaging your glute, your butt muscle, to swing the leg behind you. So it's an active elongation of the front of the thigh by engaging the back of the thigh. And you hold for about 5 to 10 seconds and then come forward. Engage the glute to swing the leg behind you. Many people start to lift that knee up because they're tight through the outer hip. Keep it in line with your hip, and you'll notice you get more of a stretch oftentimes through that outer quad, and then let it come forward. Engage the glute, swing the leg behind you, holding for 5 to 10 seconds, and come forward. The point of having the bottom knee up is that you don't arch your back at all. And the point of doing this in sideline versus standing at first is to minimize how much bailout goes into the lumbar spine. People often arch their back like this, takes away the stretch on the front of the thigh, and puts more strain into the low back than we want. So we'll go about 5 or 6 times for 5 to 10 second holds on this top leg. And then bring that upper leg into the 90 degrees at hip position, knee resting on the ground. Reach back with your right hand to grab your left foot. Try to get your left thigh in line with your body. And what we're gonna do here, this is a Bretzel Stretch, it's called. Gray Cook first talked about this. A lot of people just refer to it as the pretzel. You take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, allow yourself to open up as the chest rolls towards the ceiling. Deep breath in, and as you exhale, let that chest open up towards the ceiling. Your goal is that this front knee stays down, and as you open up through the chest, you're able to get that lower leg, in this case your left foot, to touch the ground. So the left foot's on the ground, right knee is on the ground, head and chest are rotated up towards the ceiling. I'll usually go through about 4 or 5 breath cycles here before rotating out of this. Now, to incorporate a little shoulder mobility, if there's no pain in the shoulders, and you need a little space with this, so I'll create my space. Sideline shoulder circle, where you reach that hand out as far as you can in front of you and open your body to rotate the hand behind you in as big of a circle as possible. So this is a great way to incorporate flexibility through the hips, the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine and rib cage up into the shoulder. I'm following my hand with my eyes so I can essentially see my hand the entire way around, and I'm using my body to drive the mobility of my shoulder, not vice versa. Now go ahead and flip over onto the other side. We'll start with the top leg stretch. Right knee is up towards chest at 90 degrees at the hip. Left hand grabs left midfoot. Use your glute, so use the butt muscle to swing the leg behind you until you feel a good stretch through the front of the thigh. Remember, the hand is just keeping the knee bent, but the glute is doing all the work. So I could almost get the stretch here without my hand, but it's better if I can add that final bend to the knee. Bring it forward. Use your glute to swing the leg behind you again. Let the knee be in line with your body, or even slightly lower, not biased up towards the ceiling. And then bring it forward. Use your glute to swing the leg behind you. And then bring it forward. Swing the leg behind you. Holding for 5 to 10 seconds, really engaging your glute. Bring it forward. One more time, swing it behind you. Very good. Now, lower the left knee to the surface. Grab your right foot with your left hand. Use the right hand to hold the left knee to the ground. Take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, you're going to rotate to open up. Now you'll be able to see how my foot that's behind as I continue to open and breathe, I can rotate it until that foot touches the ground, and while keeping the other knee on the ground as well. Don't force anything here. Just move with what your body gives you. And again, about 4 or 5 breath cycles before rotating out of it. Then we add some shoulder mobility. So as I open up, fingertips are on the ground, following my hand around, rotating through. Open up, following my hand, rotate through. If you have shoulder pain and you have to lift up a bit through a range, just control it. That's okay. If you can't do the full circle because you get a lot of pain in this zone, that's where a lot of people do, you can turn this into just an active opener and vary your range of motion as you move a little bit higher and higher, but stay out of that pain zone. All right? So now come up onto hands and knees, and let's just do a couple of cat-cows. Head drops, tailbone drops, head lifts, chest lifts. Head drops, tailbone drops. Now, when we do the cat-cow, if we just stay in the same range, meaning my hands right under my shoulders, my knees right under my hips, we're only really biasing movement to the same areas of the spine in the same way. Whereas if we do something like shift our weight back and change the range that we're working in, we can start to move our bodies in places that otherwise tend to just go along for the ride. In this case, and in most cases, we need more flexibility up through our T-spine, so shifting our weight back in this extension position can be helpful for that. You can even drop onto your elbows, get the knees a little wider, go into extension. Don't overdo it at the neck. The neck doesn't need to look way up, but you can kind of shift your body weight forward and back in a body saw kind of manner, keeping yourself from rounding. Try to keep yourself extended, all right? So good to get a little bit of spinal mobility there. Now, let's go into some variations on the pigeon pose. Easiest way to get into this pose is going to be to rotate your feet to the side and then take your leg up a little bit further forward, rotate, and sit back so that that knee isn't too far bent, and it doesn't have to be overly rotated, but obviously you'll feel a good stretch through the back of the hip. If you have pain in the knee, you might not do this, or you can try taking something like a pillow or a towel behind that knee so that it's not quite as bent, and soften the angle of bend right there. I'm going to stick to this. All right? So a lot of people hold the pigeon and they breathe, and that's all good. What I'd like you to try to do is first rock side to side and feel as you rock towards the leg that's stretching. Right now it's my left leg under me, my right leg's extended behind. As I rock to the left, I feel an increase in stretch of the hip, back to the middle, and that active motion pressures on and pressures off the stretch. Now with my right leg, my trail leg, I can dig my toes in and straighten the right knee. Now I'm using my quad and my right glute, and I'm getting a good stretch in my right calf, but it also enhances the stretch on my left hip in the back as I lengthen the front of the right. So this is a great way to combine flexibility through the back of one side and the front of the other. It's not a huge stretch, but you're getting some length there. And most importantly, you're getting active length. Okay? So those are some of the options here in the pigeon stretch. Now, if you shift your weight a little further forward, don't try this if you have sensitive knees, but if you engage your left foot into the ground and stabilize a bit through your arms, see if you can straighten that right knee all the way and then lift it off the floor. So we're starting to work on some stability of the hip, the left hip, in a position where it's being stretched, reinforcing new range of motion. So you can do that for a hold of 5 to 10 seconds. You can also go up and down Really isolate it to the hip though. Don't arch your back as you do so. Okay, rotate the knee back to neutral. Switch sides. Swivel feet to the left. Left leg up and over. Drop down into position. Rock side to side here. As you're rocking side to side to the right, feel how it increases the stretch. To the left, less so. Right increases stretch. Left, less so. And you go ahead and do that on and off a few times. It's a small range. Again, keep in mind if the knee's bothering you, either don't do this, there's other ways to stretch the back of the hip, like the first thing we did, or try using a pillow or towel to support the knee. Dig the left toes into the ground, straighten the knee and bend the knee. Straighten the knee and bend the knee. Feel yourself using your left quad to drive the knee to the ceiling and then lowering down. As the quad engages and drives the knee to the ceiling, you should feel your left glute engage as well. And you should feel a little bit of an increase in stretch through that right hip that you're already stretching. You can drive that knee up and down, as much as you want, keeping it active. Then shift your weight forward just a little bit. Really engage your right foot into the surface. Straighten the left knee all the way, and then lift that leg. Again, you can do holds here, or you can do repetitions. It's a small range of hip extension. And again, this is pretty advanced, so if you're having pain, take it easy. Come out of that position. Very good. Now, step 1 foot forward. Let's start with the left. Hands on the inside of the left leg. Straight right knee. Okay, don't let it be sagging here. Totally straight. Keep the right knee planted. Rotate up towards the ceiling. As you rotate up towards the ceiling, keep the left knee in line with the middle of the left foot. And hold this position here. As you hold this position, keep the right knee straight and the left knee facing forward. Hold for about 15 to 20 seconds. Come back down. Okay? You can repeat that as many times as you'd like. Right here, we'll do it twice. Keep that right knee straight. Always got to reinforce and remind myself. As the hand's up towards the ceiling, you're facing it with your eyes. Don't let your head hang behind. Don't let your shoulder shrug up to your ear. Keep it down. Hand lowers down. Okay, switch legs. Right foot's in front. Both hands on the inside of that foot. Straighten the left knee. Keep it totally straight. Rotate up towards the ceiling. People tend to let that knee fall out. Don't let the right knee fall out, and don't let the left knee bend. Follow the hand up to the ceiling. Don't let the shoulder shrug up towards your ear. Again, holding this position for about 15 to 20 seconds. Lowering down. Focus on deep breathing. I can't as much as I'm talking. But as you rotate it up, you can also bend and straighten that knee to keep it a little bit more active. And I don't mind if you rotate the right knee in and out while you're holding this, as long as you're aware of your position and you're feeling how that kind of greases the joint versus just being unaware and letting it fall out and losing some of the stretch. All right, come back down. Bring the legs behind you. This next stretch is for the inside of the leg. So hands will be planted in front of you. Start with your left knee out wider than the left hip and the left hand. Right foot out to the side. So you should feel a little guitar string through the inside of the leg. Don't let your back be hiked up, way up high. Do your best to keep things as neutral as possible. In this position, you can go ahead and do a cat-cow. And you'll feel how, like I said during the first stretch, right now we're moving the socket on the ball, meaning we're moving the pelvis on the hip bone, which is different than a lot of ways that people stretch, and that variety is great. Shift your weight back to enhance the stretch and increase the stretch. And here you can just breathe, or you can do that cat-cow. I also like to add some rotation. Right, so taking the right hand through and then rotating up to the ceiling. Again, follow your hand with your eyes. A little bit of an increased stretch on the right thigh as we rotate through. A little bit of an increased stretch on the left thigh as we rotate up. And we'll work through that a few times. Up. Down and rotate. And up. Down and rotate. Up. One more time. And up. Okay. Now really ground your hands. Bring a little bit more weight forward into the hands. Really focus on the diagonal between the right hand and the left knee. Almost try to hug those two together and push both into the ground more. And see if you can unload that right leg and hold that position for 5 to 10 seconds, or again, repetitions. What are you doing here? You're reinforcing that mobility that you've gained through the hip. Then switch sides. Right knee wider than hip and wider than the right hand. Left foot out to the side. Okay, in this position, let's go through some cat-cows. Moving the socket on the ball. Incorporating some spine mobility. This is all more than just stretching. It's building strength and resilience in a variety of motion. Shift back to enhance that stretch. Now we'll add some rotation. Take the left hand through and then rotate up. Rotate through and up. Following the hand with the eyes as you go through. Feel how that drives the opposite pelvis down, increases the stretch. As you rotate up, get a little bit of stretch on the knee that's bent, on the thigh on that side. One more rotation. And up. Very good. Now, feel the connection as you shift your weight forward a little bit between left hand and right knee. Almost pull them together through the mat, push into the ground, and see, can you unload your left leg? Harder for me. Holds, repetitions. Okay, and you can work through that a few times. Then come back onto hands and knees. All right, we're gonna do a few more. Stretching our hip flexors first. Half kneeling position. You can do this in a variety of ways. I'll show you a couple different variations. The starting point would be in a vertical position so that your trunk is aligned with the thigh of your down leg. Now, don't let your pelvis rotate forward. Keep your tailbone tucked so that your front is lengthened. Now, shift your weight forward, but as you do, don't lose that angle, trunk and thigh of the down leg. And you should feel a light stretch through the front of that right thigh. Use a stick for balance next to you if you need. Enhance the stretch by really reaching long up towards the ceiling. And you can just hold this position as you deep breathe. The breathing's going to enhance the stretch. Now you can add a lot of variety here. So I'll make a few recommendations and you can do what works for you. First is with that back leg, rotate the foot inward and then tuck your hip and shift forward. Is that more or less of a stretch than when the foot was straight forward? For me, it's less. If I rotate my foot outward, this is internal rotation of my hip, I get more of a stretch. So I'm going to keep the rotation of my hip in the angle that enhances the stretch for me. Otherwise, same thing, tuck the pelvis, shift forward, keep the angle of trunk to trail leg, add a stretch here. Reaching up as high as you can. Okay, so adding that rotation is one good variation. switch to the other leg and show a couple others. You can put your trail foot up on something, like a step behind you or up on the couch, and the height is just dependent upon your preference and what you can do. Keep the pelvis tucked. You can still bias rotation. For me, internal rotation is still tighter on this left side. So I rotate my foot outwards, which internally rotates my hip. I tuck my pelvis. I've got an increased stretch on my quad by virtue of that foot being up on the step. Shift the weight forward. Don't lose the angle of trunk to down leg. Add a stretch here. You can also make this a contract, relax stretch by pulling. In this case, I pull my left knee towards my right foot and my right foot towards my left knee. So I'm engaging everything together for about 5 seconds. And as I relax, I can go forward a little bit further because I've engaged the muscles that I'm stretching. Now, I could put something under front and back leg to enhance flexibility through the back side here, front side on the left. Or just start with keeping the down leg where it was while you put the foot up on the step. I like this option best for beginners because it really forces you to keep the low back in a neutral position. It's really hard to overextend and lose the stretch when your foot's up on something. So I'm showing you a lot of variations. Hopefully you watch this once and get all the information, and then you can integrate it on your own as you watch it more and more. But see what works best for you. All right, so that's for your hip flexors for the front of the leg. Now, come into a position where your right knee is out and right foot is in, and your left foot is behind you. You call this Z sitting. Some people call this the hip box. All right. If you're tight in your hips, you can sit on something like a yoga block. Point is, you want to keep your low back as neutral as possible. Rotate your body to the outside of the knee or to the outside of the side where the foot is in. Let's say that. Okay. As you rotate away, plant your hands and press up to lengthen your front. You should feel a bit of a stretch through the rib cage as you take some deep breaths in and out. Focus on deep breathing here, 5 to 10 reps. And then the other thing I'd like you to do is watch my left foot as I lift it up a little bit and lower it down. Lift it up, lower it down. Lift it up and down. So you're close to end range mobility of your hip, but you're reinforcing your control of that range by lifting that foot off the surface. If you can't do that and you find it hard, sometimes you can lift and guide with your hand and then let go. See if you can hold and kind of work towards that. Okay? Now back in the position that we started in, I want you to drive your knees into the ground as you pop upright to kneeling. And then slowly lower back down to sitting before you go upright again. So from sitting to kneeling, generally this is a fluid, good exercise for people. Occasionally it can bother people's knees. If that's the case, again, don't force it. Or start where you're up on a yoga block and you're not having to move through such a range. And we'll go about 5 to 10 times up and down here. Very good. Bring that yoga block out. Switch legs. Now, left foot comes in, right behind. And what you're going to start with here is rotating to the left. Press through the hands, lift the chest. Deep breathing. In and out. As you breathe, try to lift that right foot up, down, down. And keep incorporating that control of this motion, which is hip internal rotation, which is one of the first movements or mobility aspects of the hip that we lose in general. So this can be very helpful to keep those hips open and mobile. Come back to midline. Tuck that right foot so that it's flat. Drive up. And again, we're doing slowly up, slowly down. Really control, particularly the down phase. That's the most difficult part of this. It's easier to drive up. It's hard to slowly lower down. And we'll go about 5 to 10 times here. Every time you push up, feel your glutes driving the action to bring the pelvis forward, and then slowly lower down. Drive up and down. All right, last thing. Hands under shoulders, dig your feet down. Push up into a downward dog position. I'm gonna go a little wider with my hands. Do your best to not let your back round. That means you gotta keep your knees bent, push your hips back, and in this position, I'm gonna have you just pedal your knees. So you're doing your best to not round the back. There may be a little bit of flexion, but minimize it as much as you can, and do so by keeping those knees bent, hands pushing the hips high and away as you pedal the knees. Pedaling the knees lets you alternate a good posterior fascial stretch one at a time. Lower the knees down. Okay, sit back into a child's pose position. And just take a couple of deep breaths here. And let yourself relax. Very good. So again, the goal was to reinstate mobility through every motion of the hip, and then within aspects of that mobility to really get you to engage your muscles in ways that increase variety of motion and neuromuscular control at end ranges, which leads to resilience. If you have good mobility of your hips and good mobilities of your shoulders, which we'll talk about in another video, it takes a lot of pressure off your neck, your mid back, your low back. So a good place to start, if there was pain with any of those modifications, then again, regress to simpler means, or get in touch with us. We'd love to hear comments on what we went through today, and also what you'd like to see going forward. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it.